Caldwell had summoned Nilfgaardian support. Meve assumed they were not far behind. Yet in the unforgiving terrain, a full Nilfgaardian division could not hope to close the gap. Small detachments, however, light cavalry or footmen, could very well do just that. So when black-clad men emerged from the mist, the Queen was not surprised. She ordered her troops to fall in, form up, and brace to defend the line. Yet the attack never came. The invaders stood silent, motionless, and Meve got a closer look. They were slouched, ashen-faced, unsure of step, and covered in sores. Isgith had treated them as cruelly as any. Teetering in his saddle, the commander broke formation. He rode forth and addressed the Queen in fluent common tongue.
Half my men are wounded, the others sick. Your force does not fare much better.
True. Yet we outnumber you soundly.
Indeed. If it comes to combat, you are certain to win. But in this damn swamp, all wounds fester. Flesh is quick to rot. You will lose many more apart from those who fall.
What do you mean, precisely?
Asked the Queen, her eyes narrowing, her head tilted to the side.
We should part ways in peace. There's a war on, there'll be another chance to fight. Perhaps even face one another. But not here. And not like this.
Suddenly unsure, the Queen weighed the officer's words. Their logic was sound, though they could also prove a ruse.
Your Grace,
Xavier's voice came from behind Meve's back.
we can't let them pass. They've done only harm, and they'll not stop and go home.
Alas, I see things differently.
Meve said with a sly smile.
Crush you now, and I'll have fewer to fight down the line.
You seem sure of yourself, milady.
Let me show you why. At them!
Meve gave her mount a lash of her reins and charged headlong at the commander and his force. Amidst the fog and dense, gnarled forest, the battle ran its course. When the last sounds of fighting had died down, Meve was not sure who'd prevailed. Then soldiers came forth, fatigued and hurt, with smiles on their lips. She saw they were hers, and only then knew victory was hers as well. But this was no time to celebrate. She let everyone rest, then gave the order to resume the march. A great Nilfgaardian force pursued them. This most recent delay had allowed it to draw nearer. The Lyrian force had reached the very heart of Isgith. From every branch, vine and shrub hung leeches and ticks by the dozen. Swollen with blood, their abdomens glistened, glowing red in the misty air. Air so putrid it set Meve's head to spinning. She paused at a moss-covered boulder, pressed her flushed forehead against its cool surface. Her soldiers passed by, pallid, filthy, drained. She wished to say something, lift their spirits, but instead a cough rattled her breast. Suddenly, splashes all around Meve in the water, as if a rain of fist-sized drops had begun to fall. The Queen lifted her heavy gaze. Seemingly on command, ticks and leeches dropped into the warm, soupy waters, then clumsily wriggled off toward a dead alder grove. Meve knew at once what skulked behind the trees. Gurnikora, Isgith's mistress, Isgith's queen.
Weapons at the ready!
The Queen roared.
Close ranks!
The Lyrians quickly converged, formed a wall of shields, and crouched behind them. Terrified, They stared as a multitude of eyes flashed open midst the branches while revolting, muck-covered beasts rose from the gurgling waters around. Meve silently uttered a prayer. Hail Military, great mother, maiden and crone, ever have us in your care.
Everyone, rally to me!
Yeah, yeah!
Majesty! These parasites, they feed on her blood! My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me. There's a time to reap, a time to sow, and a time to die.
How quickly the scales tip.
Aye.
Of the battle in Isgith, Meve remembered very little. It seemed a nightmare, its details a haze, the sensations very real. Amidst a thick fog, she fought in a frenzy, desperately hacking at the scourge that advanced from all sides. In the end, silence fell over the swamp. Its boiling waters lay calmed. The ticks and leeches were gone, while Gurnikora lay among rotting leaves, covered in blood, unmoving. But still a fearsome sight.
Burn the corpse,
Rasped the queen.
and we move on.
The soldier's eyes darted about in a series of silent glances. It took Meve a moment to realize the difficulty. They still feared it. Though the monster's lifeless body lay on the ground, they dared not go near. Were she to repeat the order, they would carry it out. Yet she did not wish to force that on them. Swallowing her own revulsion, she walked up to Gurnikora's corpse and set it alight. The air soon filled with the suffocating stench of burning hair and flesh. Sparks belched out as melting fat fell on flame. Until finally, nothing was left of the bloody mistress but scorched bone. The Lyrians resumed their march towards the banks of the Yaruga. They forced their weary legs to maintain a swift pace, and stole no second glance at what they'd left behind. One day, the quartermaster approached with news to report. Alas, bad news.
Your Grace, our food stocks have near run out. And about villages, folk have naught to spare, not even to trade.
The Queen dispatched small groups of scouts. They were to scour the countryside for hunting camps, beekeepers, charcoal burners, any souls willing to trade food for coin or goods. The first scouts came back around dusk. The last 3 detachments returned not at all. At first, Meve suspected they'd fallen prey to monsters, the beastly or Nilfgaardian kind. Later, she learned the men had left naught of their belongings behind. She'd been soft-hearted toward deserters. This lot decided they too would give it a try. That night, Meve lay still but sleepless. Beneath thin covers, she was cold, hungry, irate. Towering alders grow thick in Isgith, their crowns weaving an expansive canopy that obscures the sky. Any sunbeams to slip through this twisted thicket scatter in the milky mist below. Thus the marsh abides in a state of perpetual twilight, wherein a sense of time and direction are easily lost. As the force moved along, a glow appeared in the trees. The Lyrians squinted, their mouths agape in wonder. An orb hung over the water, pulsating, humming. It circled the soldiers, darted off a distance, then hovered as if waiting.
A will o' the wisp, that is,
Whispered one of the footmen.
believe it's keen to show us something.
Meve knew the wisp could prove treacherous, lead them into a trap. Nonetheless, she followed, though not entirely certain why. Her soldiers seemed eager, she sensed they approved. Yet she was also simply curious.
We follow it. Carefully. Weapons at the ready.
As the wisp led the Lyrians down a narrow, winding path, Meve surveyed her surroundings warily. Beads of sweat emerged upon her brow. But her fears, in the end, proved unfounded, for at the path's end, the troops found what appeared to be a caravan's remains. Its wagons, rot-eaten, half-buried in the bog, had sat there for decades, perhaps longer. Despite this, gilded panels and scraps of silver-threaded fabric showed they'd once been rather ornate. Inside the wagons, the soldiers discovered many steel crates. Rust-covered but intact, they contained truly dazzling treasures. Sacks bulging with gold coin, pearl-encrusted goblets, exotic velvets and silks in beads.
Blimey, the sheer amount. And here of all places.
A footman muttered under his breath. Meve quickly pieced it all together. She too had once ridden in such a caravan, splendid and laden with gold, when she'd left her home to marry. The rest of the story was not difficult to divine. This was a maiden's dowry. She and her retinue lost their way. Isgith proved their grave, unbeknownst to any other. The wisp circled Meve's party, blinked several times, then faded into thin air. The troops resumed their march, and all seemed in order. Seemed, for soon several footmen were discovered to be gone. Greed had been their ruin. They'd grabbed too much. The loot had weighed them down, and the marsh had embraced them. In evading Nilfgaard's banners, Meve led her force into Angren's wildest reaches. The foe could not attack the Lyrians there, yet hazards of another sort befell them. One day they reached a quagmire too vast and deep to ford. So the Queen summoned her engineer, Xavier, and called on him to build a makeshift bridge. By nightfall, he had drawn up plans.
We shall start by laying abutments, then drive piles into the mire.
The depth?
We dropped plumb lines. 4 L's.
Confused by the plans, Niamh did not see as Xavier slipped a line off his shoulder. By the time she felt it on her throat, she feared it might be too late.
I long awaited this moment, when we would be alone. You die now, Majesty, and with you dies Lyria's, Rivia's, the whole North's will to resist. Hail, Ketzer! Hail!
What died was the Nilfgaardian rallying cry in Xavier's throat. At the last instant, Gascon and Reynard rushed in to save the warrior queen, and thus proved their loyalty beyond any doubt.
Your Grace! Your Grace!
There was no answer, but Reynard could hear her breathe. Niamh would live. It was several hours later when Niamh finally came to. She opened her eyes, then Gascon and Reynard helped her to her feet.
Careful, Your Majesty.
I should have been more careful earlier. Damn it. If you two hadn't...
No need for words. You needn't mention it.
I couldn't disagree more. We're due for a long conversation. First of all, I owe you thanks. Second, my trust in you both has been heavily tarnished. I believe that goes without saying. Yet today you proved beyond all doubt that I can rely on you. So I thank you.
To serve under your...
Likely I'd have put it differently, but Reynard seems to have the right idea.
Very well. We've reassured ourselves of admiration for one another enough. We've matters to which we must attend. I trust as I lay there dead to the world, you did not sit about with your thumbs up your bums. Have you at least learned why Xavier betrayed us, sided with the Empire?
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Your Grace, the rogue who lunged at you, in truth, was one Gwalter ep Luinoch, a Nilfgaardian spy.
This discovery you made how?
We found in his toolbox a concealed compartment, letters inside. Though encrypted, we managed to decipher them. They were the Grey Rider for you to read.
The swine. An Imperial spy in my ranks this whole time. But to wait so long to strike, why?
He'd only just received the order. Another letter in the box, signed by General Eb Dahi, stated, "To Gwalter ep Luinoch, eliminate M at first opportunity."
Honourless bastards. They'll stop at nought.
Now, Maeve, you'll gain nought by getting riled. No sense to it. This is good news, in fact.
Is that so?
Think. Ep Dahi had a spy in our midst. He knew our movements, had his eye on us, his finger on the pulse. He knew our plans, who we parlayed with, and yet he didn't order your assassination. For you posed no threat. Well, clearly so much changed. Congratulations! Nilfgaard fears you now.
And rightly so. Just a moment, that makes no sense. He saved my life in Mahakam, on the bridge.
He did, for he had to.
In one of the letters we found, Ep Dahi orders Gwalter to watch over Elder-in-Chief Hoog. The Scoia'tael in the mountains was sent there by Nilfgaard to recruit dwarves, but their commander, the Vixen, they feared she'd attack Bruva himself, something Eb Dahi wished to avoid.
Naturally. For someone else could seize power, someone not so neutrally inclined. Someone more likely to aid me, gods forbid. But we found him in the rubble at Rosberg, midst the ashes.
Precisely what placed him beyond suspicion.
We suspect Walter enlisted with the Edanians some years past, infiltrated that army.
He had a hand in Rosberg's defense. Then, when the time was right, he lent that same hand to its demise. Caused an explosion that tore a hole through its walls. It worked, but at a price. He suffered severe burns. If not for our medics, he'd have...
Stop. So it was not elves who brought about the fort's fall as he claimed?
A filthy lie to stoke the fires of racial hatred. To stir conflict and chaos and rage that would make the realm of Edirn waver and fall.
If we're to judge by Rayla's actions, he was rather successful.
Bastard. Yet even so badly hurt, in such pain, not for a moment did he drop his mummer's act.
I've heard much of Nilfgaardian spies, Your Grace. They're trained from childhood, face constant indoctrination. They do anything for the Emperor, anything and everything. As soon as Gwalter spotted a chance to join our ranks, to be at your side, he took it, exploited it ably.
To be brief, I've traitors all about me.
Your Grace, you resent our actions, I understand, but...
You, Villem, the Cad Caldwell, Gascon, Gabor, finally Xavier. Tell me how. How am I to trust anyone?
You can't. Amongst all the realms in the north, you're Nilfgaard's sole rival. One remaining threat. All other rulers either soundly defeated and enchained, or tails tween their legs, they've donned Nilfgaard's leash. The Blackclads will do all to destroy you, if not upon the field, then in secret, with an assassin and a quick, sharp blade.
What's left? Prayer? Melitele too is sure to turn and take Nilfgaardian gold sooner or later. Ugh. We've talked enough. We must form up. Move on.
Majesty, you ought to rest. You stand swaying. Your step can't be too sure.
Only my horse needs step true.
Maeve, you've just about had the life choked out of you. No time to play the hero.
I'm not Gascon. Quite the opposite, actually. These damn swamps, they terrify me. I wish to get the hell out and never, ever look back.
The Aruga lies near. I sent scouts ahead. They've secured a barge. We can sail to Red Lobendon.
Splendid. Sound the horns. We march.
Sandflies and mosquitoes blanketed Maeve's face and neck. She did not bother to brush them away. She'd been in Angren long enough to know more would come in their place.
Your Majesty,
Reynard called from behind.
our scouts have returned. We've a large force of blackclads on our tail, infantry and horsemen, and they draw nearer.
Blast!
Maeve wiped away the sweaty hair stuck to her brow.
What say you, Reynard? Shall we give them a fight?
We're but a few miles from the river, where a barge awaits. It makes no sense to battle now.
Though near her strength's end, Maeve stepped up her pace. She could not wait to stand upon a barge deck and leave Angren's infernal bogs behind. Alas, in place of the promised vessel, they found only severed moorings.
No! No, it can't be!
Suddenly, Maeve drove her fist into the trunk of the nearest tree. Fortunately, a soft and rotted one.
This isn't so!
Your Grace, have mercy. I stepped away but for a spell.
Croaked a scout, pale as a ghost.
Thieves jumped out the underbrush, fell upon it. Whole band of them. A white-haired warrior, a minstrel, and a lass what had a bow.
Well, is that all?
Interrupted Gascon.
No vampire sat upon an ass with no saddle? You're cocked up, man, damn it. Maeve, what now?
The Queen turned back towards the swamp. Between the trees, she glimpsed a golden sun glimmering upon a banner.
We shall discuss that later,
Said the Queen, drawing her sword.
provided we survive.
You mad? Don't shake that!
This harvest will be reaping black-clad heads.
Ha ha! Leave it to us! Alba! Never had your kneecaps broken!
Company! Forward march!
There he goes! Trouver les gloires!
Coin never stinks, no matter how rank the pouch.
Nice tether tool.
Yes. Desselat Zweifel!
Hertha!
Yes. Desselat Zweifel!
Near the battle's end, Meve faced a black-clad officer. Nimbly dodging his strike, she countered. The Queen's sword sank deep, the hilt rattling his breastplate. A rush of hot blood covered Meve's hands. The winged helmet toppled from the officer's head, exposing a sweaty face, gasping for breath.
When?
Before the Queen stood a ruddy-haired boy with long eyelashes. He was Villem's age, perhaps a bit older. His body slumped, then disappeared beneath the malodorous foam atop the murky waters. Meve cast away her sword as if it had burned her hand.
Majesty, what is it? Are you hurt?
Reynard said, rushing to her side.
No, I'm not. It's fine. Give the order to march. With no barge, we must walk to Red Lobington along the riverbank.
Your Majesty, we must tend to the wounded. Use the rest of the day, I wager.
We ain't time enough for that.
Interjected Gascon.
That was but the vanguard sent in pursuit to slow us down. And even so, they outnumbered us 2 to 1. What happens when the main force arrives? We must flee. Now.
And abandon the injured, to bleed to death in the mud.
Alas, Reynard, yes. Unless you'd rather we stayed and died with them.
Gascon is right. Should Nilfgaard close the distance between us, we'll stand little chance.
Phew. At least you've the sense to...
But I would sooner perish than let my men rot in this accursed swamp. The medics will tend to all the wounded. Then, what will be, will be.
I tell you what'll be.
Snarled Gascon.
Epdahi'll take a butcher's hook and gut you. Then hang you from Lyria capital's walls. Yet, if this be your wish...
Meve waited for the medics to sew the last stitch, tie off the last bandage. Only then did she order her force to move out. At the column's end, upon stretchers, lay those without the strength to walk, consumed by fever, dazed or unconscious, dying. Fatigued and laden with the wounded, the Lyrians moved slow as molasses. Soon, Nilfgaard's forward elements had caught up. The black-clads nipped at the Lyrians' tail with arrow volleys from the cover of trees and occasional forays by cavalry. They were in no hurry. They could torment their foes, weaken their spirit before the final clash. At long last, Meve spotted a dark form spanning the river's course, Red Lobington's bridge. Just a brief stretch more, and the Lyrians would find themselves beyond the invaders' grasp, free and clear of bogs, and the beasts that prowled them. Yet joy at this sight soon gave way to despair. The bridge was dark, black, from the horde of Nilfgaardians that held it. Clearly, the Blackclads had divined the path of Maeve's flight, and had cut off her last means of escape.
That's it. We're dead men. All! They'll cut us down to the last!
Maeve shut her eyes, felt them sting with fatigue. She knew when she turned she could not show her men 1 ounce of fear, 1 pinch of doubt. She gripped her reins tightly. The leather dug into her skin, helping her hold back her tears. And when the Queen finally spoke, her voice was strong and boomed over the river's roar.
I know what you wish to hear.
The Queen began.
That the gods watch over us. That we'll come through the fray unharmed. That a friendly force is but moments away. Those would be lies. The truth is as bitter as it is undeniable. We stand cornered. Cannot win this fight, cannot flee it. We can but choose how to die. Hanged from the boughs like common criminals. Or weapons in hand, like the fighters we are. I've made my choice. Time you made yours!
With that cry, Maeve broke for the bridge toward a forest of spears into a deluge of arrows. She let the tears fall from her eyes. Tears of rage, fear, fatigue. It was not until she'd almost reached the enemy line that she dared glance backward. And she saw she was not alone.
Defend the Queen! Valeria!
Should have listened to me, old lady.
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
We may die here today, but not on our hands and knees!
Scoia'tael! Attack!
I warned you.
Inarignalde Crowfair.
Hi-ho, hi-ho!
You mad? Don't shake that!
Your Grace, our soldiers, they flee!
Maeve was victorious on the banks of the Yaruga, but paid dearly for it. She lost a host of men and suffered harm herself. Yet she'd have been doomed, if not for a certain white-haired witcher. Maeve longed to meet her mysterious savior, and set off in search of him as soon as the battle dust had settled. She found him with the field surgeon and learned he was none other than the Witcher Geralt. Yes, incredible as it may seem, I've heard the tale from several and can vouch for its truth. At any rate, making naught of the fact that Geralt's ears were ringing from a blow with a mace, Maeve began immediately to interrogate him.
Uther, Thronebreaker?
Asked Meave, prodding him insistently. For a spell, Geralt worried his hearing was shot, but then realized the Queen had a lisp.
Worked out that way, I guess.
You guess?
Meave gagged on the blood in her mouth.
Someone hold me!
The Queen felt Geralt merited the highest honor, a knighthood. Another monarch might have delayed until a more opportune time, but not Meave. Meave delayed nothing.
Count Odo, you, sir, do the honors. Alas, I cannot because of my tooth.
For valor shown in battle, I, Meave, by the gods' grace, Queen of Lyria and Rivia, hereby do knight thee.
Geralt of place unknown. The bridge you felled with men from Rivia. Or so you guess. I guess it falls to me to dub thee Geralt of Rivia.
Meave had come home, though by a circuitous route, through Edern's smoking embers, Angren's beast-infested quagmires, cross Mahakam's snow-capped ridges. But she had returned, cloaked in legend, a mighty army in tow. The moment was weighty, and not to be tainted even by Geralt of Rivia's disappearance, or dare we say desertion. The hero of the battle for the bridge was now a sought man. Yet Meave was determined to take back her realm, with or without the Witcher's aid. Valyrian's daring escapade behind enemy lines, and the triumphant victory at the battle for the bridge that crowned it, breathed new life into the North's war effort. Bands of resistance fighters now swarmed the conquered lands, while Cedwyn and Redania, on the verge of swearing fealty to the Emperor, suddenly broke off talks with the invader. The Nilfgaardian war machine suddenly screeched to a halt, and the tide of war turned. Facing a united North, the invader had to withdraw the bulk of its forces from Lyria and Rivia. The way was cleared for Meave to retake her lost lands, defeat General Epdahi, and depose Villem. Or perhaps mother and son would not have to fight after all.
Milady, I come at King Villem's bidding.
Prince Villem's.
His Majesty proposes a meeting. No arms, no escorts.
His Majesty? Whelp's barely tall enough to reach his mother's bosom. For shame!
Silence. Let him say his piece.
His Majesty, Villem I, wishes to discuss the possibility of a truce.
He wishes to surrender. Is that his aim?
Your words, not mine, Your Grace.
I've a few more on the tip of my tongue. But save them I shall for later.
Villem I's chosen the site for the parley. In...
Villem I will choose nought. If he wishes to speak, let him meet me midst the ruins of Devil's Tower.
Understood, Your Grace. I'll relay your terms.
Villem's emissary rode off, serenaded by hisses and jeers. Frightened by the clamor, his horse reared and kicked. The rider forced his mount to obey with cracks of his crop, striking many more times than was necessary.
The fool. Nag'll toss him off first chance it gets. Soon as he loosens the reins.
No great loss, I wager. But tell me, your thoughts on this reunion?
Sounds a ruse to me. But I know that won't stop you.
Whence this certainty?
Come now, Meave. At the end of it all, he's your son. You still care about him, it's obvious.
You're absolutely right.
Perhaps let bygones be bygones. Perhaps it's not too late.
Only one way to know. Let's go.
Meave rode out clad in golden plate, her banners waving proudly overhead. She no longer led a band of ragtag partisans, but an army able to fend off an empire and drive its soldiers from her lands.
Ma'am, I've something you must see, without undue delay.
You need my help with anything?
Long you've travelled, Barnabas. The wonders you must have seen. Likely visited many exotic lands before you reached Mahakam.
Corvia, yes. Matina, yes. Nazir, doubly. Zeracania, gods, yes. And Korath, even. I mean, such beauty there, though hot. Oh, dreadfully so. Horrible place to grow turnips, if you've ever a mind to try. Novigrad, lived there a spell as well, but I didn't much care for it.
Why ever not?
The hierarch, intractable man, banned one of my inventions, condemned it as unholy, vile, etc., etc. Decided he would burn both of us at the stake. As you can imagine, we had a difference of opinion in that regard.
Perhaps I shall regret this, but do tell. What was the thing you created exactly?
I knew you'd be interested. You've a curious mind, dear Queen. We're 2 peas of a feather. Quite the clever contraption it was. Made for a widow, wealthy, but aching with longing. In her husband's absence, tormented by unfulfilled needs.
Stop right there. I knew I'd regret asking.
And see, it had this special crank that when rotated...
Barnabas, no, enough.
As you command, Your Majesty. But if you ever get the urge to see it, I've the prototype still tucked away in my trunk.
Noted. But by the gods, please, let's change the subject. Time I attended...
Never thought I'd see the day.
Rivia. And here I feared I would see it no more.
I believed you would. I believed you could succeed. Be victorious, Your Grace.
We've not arrived just yet, Reynard. Look. Black flags still flutter over the cities. We've yet much work before us. More battles to fight. More blood to spill.
Aye.
152, 154. I smell a leak.
Elven blarney.
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
Hail, Herzer.
Scoia'tael! Attack!
Quiet, or the Commissar will hear.
Scheiß! In zwei!
Should've listened to me, old lady.
We're the best regiment in the whole ploughing north! In retreat! Ha ha! Leave it to us!
Feel any burning? See a local healer or wise woman.
To thee, need gloire! Ja, ja!
My boots got sand aplenty in them. Off to the front yet again.
Her Majesty is exceptional.
Quiet, or the Commissar will hear.
Quick and painful this'll be.
Brach! Scheiß! In zwei!
Niamh needed but set one foot into the Ruwode to know something was amiss. The sickening stench of rot hung in the air. Flies swarmed in thick clouds, and crows cawed in a deafening cacophony. What had caused this murder to amass? Well, Niamh's scouts soon found out,
Your Majesty,
reported a certain Sergeant Nadamur.
not far from here, past the bend, there's a cutting and it's full of bodies. Our boys and the Blackclads alike. Bodies mutilated, horribly so, guts ripped open, entrails strewn about, heads lopped. Somewhere, well, like
Yes?
branches embrace them, grip them tight, as if the trees, they strangled them.
Hearing this, the Queen ordered a halt to their march. They would go no further, she thought, till they knew what had killed those men. Luckily, witnesses were soon found. A haggard band of resin burners emerged from a nearby dugout, black with dirt, covered in dried blood.
My lady,
Their eldest stammered.
Blackins came and started felling the wood. Forced folk to chop away, to make way for a town, they said. They pushed hard, right to the heart of the forest where the old oaks grow, and awoke some foulness. The whole camp, blackclads and loggers alike. Done in one night. No time even to draw their weapons. We was lucky. Found pits to hide in. Just heard something huffed and puffed while talking to the trees, no less.
Reynard ordered medics to tend to the tar-makers, then turned to Niamh.
We cannot wash our hands of this, Your Grace. The Nilfgaardians awoke the monster, yes, but it kills Rivians just as readily.
Niamh stood at the edge of the clearing and pricked her ears. The Ruwode echoed with the cawing of crows, which seemed to perch on its every twig. She also heard the howling of wolves and a hollow rattling, as if branches whipped in the wind, though the day was fair and still.
That Geralt. He just had to desert me.
The Queen removed her cloak to avoid snags and trundled toward the heart of the wood. Her soldiers followed, clutching cocked crossbows to sweaty cheeks.
Thank ye, Your Majesty. You'll protect us from the black...
Deep in the wood, it grew cool, with a thin fog filling the air. Niamh pushed past a large branch of hazel and froze. Before her stood a tall figure, nearly human in form, save the moss-covered deer skull in place of its head. Empty eye sockets burning with naked flame, the monstrosity hurled itself at Meve with a roar.
Rally to me!
Cried Meve, raising her shield.
Everyone! Anyone, to me! Be wary. We know not what this thing can do.
Oh, bother. What have we got ourselves into this time?
Attacked from all sides, the monster teetered and swayed, fighting off their blows with ever greater difficulty. Finally, it fell to the ground and fell apart, like an undone bundle of twigs. In disbelief, Meve towed the pile of dried branches and scraps of bark. She saw no blood, no entrails, as if no monster had ever stood there. As if it had all been a dream.
We return to the road.
Meve said, crushing the beast's deer-like skull under her heel.
Ah, and Reynard, I've a request.
Yes, Your Grace?
Once we regain the realm and return to the capital, remind me to issue an edict. No one is to enter these woods, not to log nor even to gather brush. Just in case.
Those dwelling near the Ruwode heaved a sigh of relief, and the Lyrians returned to fighting an invader who, after what they'd faced in those woods, no longer seemed so frightening.
Thank ye, Your Majesty. You'll protect us from the...
A robust rain hither comes.
Meve arrived at the walls of Gradobor, famed for fine rugs and woven tapestries. The city's artisans had been at work, no doubt pressed by the Nilfgaardians, for atop the tallest spire, that of the town hall, flapped a lustrous ebony flag, a sun of golden threads at its center. So vast was the banner, Gascon whistled in admiration.
Got to admit, the Blackclads certainly have panache.
And a vast and powerful army, I'd remind you.
Reynard interjected.
Arbalists line the walls. That stench in the air, hot tar. Victory's not likely to come cheap, I fear.
No cost is too high,
said Meve, a hardness in her voice.
Reynard, Gascon, ready our men to attack.
The Lyrians needed no more encouragement. Since arriving, they had reveled in anticipation of taking the city, then ripping the banner from its spire. The battle for Gradobor was a hard fight, though not quite as hard as most had thought it might be. During the assault, at its critical juncture, a blow fell from the blue. The unlikely heroes, merchants and burghers brought together by the city's guilds. A wave of them, all riled, swarmed the Blackclads at the gates and opened them wide to let Lyria in.
Onward! Follow me!
As fighting died down around the city, Meve rode for the town hall on a personal quest. Nilfgaard's vast, garish banner rippled overhead. With its halyard cut, it plunged like a great black bird, stricken. It was the last any would see of the golden sun over Gradobor.
3 cheers! Hip, hip, hooray!
The Lyrians were victorious, though not without aid. Meve met with the merchants who had roused the townsfolk, inspired them to rise up and fight.
Many of my soldiers, dozens, perhaps hundreds, owe you their lives today,
said the Queen.
For that I am deeply grateful. No, deeply indebted. Should you know a way I might repay the debt, don't for a moment hesitate to ask.
The merchants exchanged glances, nodded, grunted, agreed with each other without uttering a word. Then one, a clothfuller, his moustache most robust, stepped forth, bowed low, and spoke for them all.
Your Majesty, the invaders brought laws. Laws what don't agree with customs we've long held. Non-humans they forced us to accept. Let them join our guilds, sit on the city council. It's right ridiculous it is. These treacherous dwarves, why, they've been on their side from the start, so it's no wonder. But, well, the Nilfgaardian reforms, we'd like you to revoke them. Non-humans must know their place.
An awkward silence ensued. All turned their eyes to the Queen, awaiting her response.
I agree. Non-humans must know their place,
began the Queen.
So listen closely, all. Whether elf, dwarf, gnome, or human, it matters not. My subjects are equal.
Your Grace, you said it thysen. Were it not for us...
My troops would have died, true. Yet among the dead, there'd have been dwarves of Mahakam, I've no doubt. Dwarves who agreed to fight by my side when none believed I could prevail.
The tradesman huffed, the tradesman puffed. Meve silenced them with a firm swipe of her hand. She left Gradobor that very day, furious at the city's merchants for their bigotry, and irked at an unpleasant truth, that even the vile Nilfgaardians occasionally got something right. Come nightfall, the Lyrians pitched camp. Meve sat down and stared into the fire. Her officers, advisors, kept their distance, unsure if her eyes burned with the fire's reflection or a fury deep inside. Only Gabor dared approach her.
You ken, not long back, I asked myself, Gabor, you bampot, you gone bar me? Left my home, clan, family, and for why? To follow a human queen. But the day you showed me, I made the right choice.
Gabor stood and went back to the mess tent. Had he lingered a bit longer, he'd have seen Meve smile.
Well, our very own queen on the Dwarf Elder's leash. Why am I not surprised?
Beautifully knocked those racist knob-lickers do the peg!
As the Lyrians passed a cemetery marching along its ivy-covered wall, they heard mourners wailing pitifully to a priestess's moving song. The soldiers dutifully lowered their heads. Their minds sought out fallen comrades and kin, and they wondered whom else the war would yet claim.
Listen,
said Gascon, stirring Meve from her own meditation.
I think I'll veer off for a bit.
What for? To offer your condolences?
In a manner of speaking. But just go on. I'll rejoin you soon.
Meve nodded in agreement, then made as if to ride on. Yet Gascon had hardly entered the cemetery when the Queen turned and followed. Gascon quickly realized he was not alone.
Ah, Meve. Had I been plotting to do you no good, I'd not have announced I was sneaking off to do it.
What do you mean?
Come now, Meve, don't play the fool. You don't trust me, so you followed. Probably thought I'd commune with Epdahi in some crypt. Nay, better, the conclave of mages. Well, rest assured then. For if I truly had something I wanted to conceal, I dare say you'd not have noticed me slip off.
I was merely curious to see what you would do here.
Ah, indeed. It is rather curious what folk do in cemeteries. Play tiddlywinks, perhaps? Or take in the sun?
Gascon, I've grown used to you bending the rules of decorum, but now you overstep, sir. You overstep.
Oh, will you have me flogged?
Hold your tongue, sir, or I shall indeed. Splendid. Now tell me why you've come here.
If you absolutely must know, then follow me.
Gascon led Meve through the ruins of a mausoleum, past its decapitated statues, past ancient gravestones effaced, past sarcophagi smashed to pieces.
Whose is it? Could it be...
Yes, Meve. My family's vault. The Brossards.
The Brossards? Wait. The Brossards?
The very same. Traitors who in 1258 revolted against King Reginald, your late husband. The earth lie lightly upon him. An error, most certainly. We paid dearly for it. Reginald had no mercy, decimated the family. As you can see, didn't even spare the dead. I was outside, away from the house. It is the only reason I survived. I was 8 at the time, stripped of title and home. Well, I'm sure you can guess the rest. Frankly, do my damnedest not to think on it. But the wall, the cemetery, seeing them awoke all the old demons.
Your crest. I seem to recall a pointer. The Duke of Dogs. Now I understand. The Brossard's trial I remember well. Reginald was angry. He prodded and pushed. Too far. The sentence was cruel, spiteful. I felt it all, but said nothing. I'm so very, very sorry, Gascon.
Water under the bridge. And the past's a thing none of us can change.
The past, no. But the present? I could rebuild your family's tomb. All deserve to rest in peace.
Meve, the war nears its end days now, and you'll have more urgent expenses.
So I shall pay for this now. I'm grateful, Gascon, and indebted, vastly. Let me do this. Let me pay my debt in part, at least.
I thank you.
Gascon remained silent the rest of the day. When the force halted for the night, he sat secluded in his tent. But by the morn, he was his witty, mirthful self again. His family's final resting place would be returned to its former glory. This he knew, and it seemed to lift a weight from his mind. he could now reconcile with his family's tragic past.
Good Mother, grant him eternal peace.
My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me.
A highly curious case.
The chase is on!
Catch!
101, 102, 103.
We'll put Mahakam boots to Imperial arses!
There's a time to reap, a time to sow, and a time to die. Hail Katza!
Thing about the slings, they hide well.
Excellent, Seifel!
Discipline shall bring us victory!
El Herzer.
Attack!
152, 154.
Yes.
Now, how did that incantation go?
Discipline, that's what you folk lack. Erigla.
Egreto dum anime est, spes est. My prescription, a bit of bloodletting.
The Devil's Tower. We draw near, Your Grace.
No sign of Villem yet, far as I can see.
Unsurprising. Prompt he never was.
The Queen had chosen to meet Villem at Devil's Tower, and not without purpose. The structure stood on an isle, so no foe could approach without first exposing themselves on a narrow bridge. The isle had little vegetation midst which to conceal a large force. A small unit could evade detection. Altogether, not much to fear.
No escorts were your terms,
began Gascon, with a hint of mischief.
But better safe than sorry, I always say.
What are you suggesting?
Yours truly and 4 chaps behind the walls. Give a signal, any signal, and we'll leap to your side.
Meve struggled with her conscience. There was no honor in Gascon's plan, but prudence, certainly. In the end, she nodded in agreement, though not without compunction. Villem arrived soon after, the heavily armored cavalry he had in tow clearly there to boost his courage. He left them at the foot of the bridge and rode across alone. A stiff wind from the river nearly made off with his ermine fur cloak. Villem and the mother who'd borne him stood face to face. They gazed into each other's eyes, waiting to see who would look away first. When neither did, Meve broke the silence.
Time flies, and I've a kingdom to liberate. No need to drag this out. What's this about? Tell me.
I thought my messenger already did.
Oh, he did. And how? Villem I wishes to arrange a truce. Only, Villem I is in no position to parley on an equal footing. Villem I can, at most, offer his unconditional surrender, because Villem I's losing this war.
Yes, Mother, I am. And I see that by losing I've at last made you content.
Don't play the victim. What next? Will you say you turned cloak because Mummy showed no warmth, displayed no feelings?
'Twould be unfair, any such judgment. You did show feelings, chiefly enmity, contempt. But that's not why I betrayed you. No, I simply disagreed with your choices, assessments.
I had every right to do what I considered just and good.
And I had every right to voice my view, which you ever ignored. Yet this is neither the time nor the place to discuss that. Let us parley as strangers. I'm losing, you say. And you're right. But I haven't lost yet, and have no intention to surrender. I am ready, however, to renounce my fealty to the Empire and pledge my forces to you. As long as you fulfill my conditions.
Mm-hmm. Let me hear them.
First, you will not rescind the reforms I've authorized already, any of them. Second, you will guarantee both my safety and that of my advisors. Third, I shall remain your heir, and next in line for the throne.
Impudent child. Insolent beyond all measure.
Well, I had to try. Goodbye, Mother. And may you...
Hold. I didn't say I reject them.
It's come my turn to listen.
You're impertinent, Villem. As you should be. Any future king must be certain of himself and his judgments. Rely on none but himself.
Thank you. I never suspected...
I'm not done. Time now you heard my conditions. You shall remove crown and royal cloak. You shall labor from dawn till dusk. And you shall fight at the fore in every battle. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes, Your Majesty.
It's settled then. Now the road beckons.
Villem bowed, turned, and walked away. Meve followed, still angry, though she could not stifle a smile. Soon thereafter, Meve's army set out towards Rivia Castle. It would not be long now before the decisive battle.
Your Grace,
said Reynard, saluting and clicking his heels.
Peasants from the Scala region have arrived at camp. Supplicants, wishing to deliver a plea to your person.
Meve sighed. Supplicants, trials, audiences. All aspects of queendom she did not miss.
Very well. Bring them here,
she replied.
And instruct them to be brief, with no digressions.
The band of commoners was led by a sturdily built beekeeper dubbed Ethelred, son of Theobald. Finding himself in the Queen's presence, he fell to his knees and waved his arms in his best impression of proper etiquette.
Oh, my lady the Queen, your gracious mightiness, take pity on us tillers and toilers. Wars all around, leaving us but scraps to live off and barely that, to be honest. So we beg you, don't do it. Don't raise the levies. We can't pay more than...
What?
Meve interrupted.
What the devils are you talking about?
What? Your decree? One they nailed to our notice board.
The peasant said, sheepishly pulling out a parchment and pointing to the relevant paragraph with his rough finger.
We, Queen Meve, do hereby proclaim that if our throne we shall recover, the tallage, muirage, and pavage we shall raise threefold.
Meve and Reynard exchanged astonished glances. They had issued no such decree. Yet the document bore her signature and seal.
Villem, did you have a hand in this?
No, Mother,
the prince said, shaking his head.
We were at odds, true, but never would I have forged your name.
Then who fabricated this decree?
The Nilfgaardians.
The Queen replied without hesitation.
They have access to my seal, to my scribes, They wish to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, turn my folk against me. And they are liars without any honor.
The Queen tore the falsified document to shreds. Knowing this would solve nothing, she had to find the printers churning out these fakeries, and
Oi, Meavy!
cried Gascon, as usual paying no heed to courtly etiquette.
Come here a minute.
Would it hurt so terribly to occasionally address me by Your Grace or Your Majesty?
Didn't want to be petty, but since you bring it up, you've never once addressed me as the Duke of Dogs.
Meave sighed, rolling her eyes.
Get on with it.
My lads jumped one of the Blackclad's transports. Guess what they were hauling?
Gascon handed Meave a pot filled to the brim with a thick, dark fluid.
Paint?
Close. Printer's ink. Same tone used in those phony decrees.
Meave spun on her heel, put a hand to her mouth, and yelled,
Reynard! Send scouts to comb the area!
Her soldiers returned a few hours later with good news. They were able to find a Nilfgaardian printer's workshop hidden in an abandoned barn. It was guarded by a division of elite infantry.
Right, so?
Gascon thumbed the edge of his blade.
Shall we stop the presses?
Time for the Nilfgaardians to publish a retraction.
Spoke the Queen as she drew her sword.
Signed with their own blood. Follow me!
The Lyrians did not need to be told twice. Their Queen's honor, her good name, that was a cause well worth fighting for.
It's her! Yes, you fool, her!
The Nilfgaardians fought fiercely, led by a seasoned covert agent. Seeing he would soon fall into enemy hands, he put a knife to his throat and, in a quick slash, sent blood pouring over paper and still wet ink. Reynard leapt towards him, trying to stanch the red tide. But it was too late, and the spy's secrets perished with his last gargled breath. Meave picked up a freshly printed pamphlet. The document listed her many crimes and misdeeds, the true and the manufactured alike. Above the main body of the text, an etching depicted her, well, in a very unflattering manner.
How about a taste of their own medicine?
Asked Gascon, piecing blocks of type into a scathingly foul phrase.
Me and the lads will scratch out a couplet about Epdahi, spread it around the countryside, give the folk a hearty laugh at those tossers' expense.
Yes, these presses should be put to good use.
The Queen said.
But printing lewd jests is not it. We must spread facts. Tell what the Nilfgaardians did in Aldersburg, how they tried to murder me in Mahakam and Angren, what fate lies in store for those they conquer.
Gascon grew serious and set the ink-stained type back down.
Get to work. Before the sun sets, I wish to hold the first document in my hands.
Soon, in every town, village and tavern, there hung a notice detailing Nilfgaard's crimes. The outraged Rivians did what they could to strengthen the Queen's army. Some by offering coin, others by joining her ranks.
Nilfgaard left no... Peasants from Edirn have been captured and put to work by force. Nilfgaard now prepares the same fate for Rivia.
The traitorous Caldwell family's residence loomed into view. Against the horizon, it looked suitably sinister. Yet the manor had changed since Meve last saw it. 2 new wings, ornate towers, a grand colonnade. And the windows now glistened with stained glass, the gilded hue of imperial suns.
We must pay them a visit,
Seethed the queen. The great double doors opened with an echoing thud. Just inside them stood the heir to the estate, Dragomir, his wife and 3 children by his side, and Helena, the treacherous count's widow. Sliding the cap from his head, thus giving proof of the family's hereditary baldness, Dragomir knelt down upon one knee.
Your Grace, my father's betrayal stands beyond doubt and exoneration.
The young Caldwell said flawlessly, and in a single breath, as if he'd practiced a dozen times.
And his death at your hands was most well deserved. I beseech you to lay your trust in Prince Villem. He'll confirm I knew naught of my father's plans. I humbly ask that you not punish me for his sins. Allow me to stay on my ancestral lands, to serve faithfully as your loyal subject.
I believe not a word slithering out of his mouth,
whispered Reynard.
The first chance he gets to stab you in the back, he will take.
Meve narrowed her eyes and gazed at Dragomir. Large drops of sweat dripped from his brow.
You may stay,
said the queen, finally breaking the silence.
On 2 conditions. Firstly, you will make a considerable donation toward the war effort. Then field an infantry regiment, fully outfitted, under my command.
Naturally, Your Grace. And the other?
In one swift motion, Meve snatched a crossbow from a soldier, put it to her cheek, and loosed. Caldwell the Younger screamed bloody murder as he threw up his arms to shield his face. The bolt hissed by and struck the center of a golden sun, shattering one of the stained glass windows.
Redecorate,
said the queen flatly. She then mounted up and sped off, earnestly hoping she'd not come to regret her generosity.
I shall replace the glazing in the windows to bear Rivian diamonds.
Alas, it appeared the war had ravaged even these woods. Where life had stirred and grown tall before, only resinous trunks remained. And the village itself had lost its quaint allure, surrounded now by a double stockade, a golden sun fluttering above it.
Bastards couldn't even let the damn trees be.
Gascon seethed. A dismal scene. Her once cherished wood, and it weighed heavily on the Queen's spirits. Waldenrad had been a place removed, where she could rest and forget the weight of her crown. Reynard's voice roused Meve from her sad reverie.
A Nilfgaardian garrison holds the village,
he said.
We ought to drive them out. Avoid any surprise later from the...
Give the order to...
The time has come to purge these devils from our home!
When the battle dust had settled, Meve instructed her soldiers to gather Willowhane's inhabitants. Upon spotting their armed liberators, the common folk cowered in terror.
No longer need you fear.
The Queen shouted.
No longer must you worry about homes and loved ones. The war's nearly done.
Of a sudden, a villager dropped to his knees and raised his hands to the heavens in supplication.
Trache! Guide back then!
Meve broke off oddly, baffled by the man's outburst. And then it dawned on her. The Rivians of Willowhane had been driven away. Taking their place, Nilfgaardian settlers brought in to transform the near-subsistence plots of local peasants into great estates producing for the Empire. Reynard managed to grasp the essence of the Nilfgaardian peasants' frantic pleas.
They wish to stay. They've come to love the land. They pledged to renounce their emperor, swear allegiance to you as their rightful ruler.
Meve had stopped listening. She turned to survey the hamlet. The walls of the huts freshly whitewashed, tools neatly arranged, flower beds well tended. A young girl of 6 or 7 summers peered out from her hiding place in a sunflower patch.
Your Majesty?
Asked Reynard, having noted that Meve's mind had wandered.
What are your orders? What shall we do?
Tell them! Actually, no. I shall tell them myself.
Meve stood on a bench, drew, then brandished her sword, and yelled at the top of her lungs.
Out! Go! Begone! This is our land, our country. Understand?
Without understanding a single word, the settlers easily deciphered the Queen's sentiment. They hastily gathered their chattels and fled. Meve sheathed her sword and resumed the march. And Willowhane, once vibrant, now stood quiet and lifeless, save for the wind howling through it.
Mom, I've come to tell you I must leave your army.
What? Why?
Against my better judgment, I joined you to heal your wounded. I realize now that was a mistake.
What exactly do you mean?
What you did runs counter to all my beliefs. You had your reasons, and have them still, I know. Yet I've no desire to abet them. I'd feel shame to lend a hand.
What can I do? Is there anything that would make you stay?
No, Mom. Farewell.
So be it. Good luck and Godspeed, Isbel.
Let me tell you of Ravencloft, a quarry Meave passed by. A quarry with a dark history. For years earlier, its wall had collapsed, burying dozens alive. Scholars summoned from Oxenfurt were unanimous in their findings. The rock was fragile, further digging would likely cause slides. Meave had heeded the scholars' advice and closed the quarry by royal decree. Yet now, as she neared it, Meave could hear the even tap of pickaxes. She dispatched scouts to investigate. They returned promptly, their faces sullen, their cloaks blanched with a fine limestone dust.
Quarry's open anew, Your Grace. Nilfgaardians. They've got folk in the pit working it. Appear to be from the surrounding villages.
Interesting. Their engineers have found a way to render it safe, secure the walls.
I'd say that's right unlikely, Majesty. Judging by the fresh graves we saw.
My son, I trust now you see the superior culture Nilfgaard has brought.
Said Meave, turning towards Villem. In answer, the prince merely dropped his head. The queen then turned to Reynard, as ever at her side.
Reynard, what do you advise?
As a soldier, my queen, I'd advise against any kind of assault. The terrain's hard, unsuitable for a fight, and we've little to gain from a victory. As a man, however...
Yes?
To leave our folk in chains, in that death trap. It wouldn't be right.
If I were to calculate in heart and mind, keep note of gains and losses...
began Meave.
I'd bend the knee to the Imperials, just as Villem did. But bloody arithmetic won't dictate my course. For I do what's just. I do what's right. Follow me!
Her troops followed without hesitation, swords in hand, their heart...
Those whoresons. Forcing my own subjects to fight.
The Lyrians handily dispatched the Nilfgaardian overseers, more trained in the ways of the whip than the sword. Those who survived now found themselves shackled in the very chains they'd forced the peasants to wear. Peasants. Oh, unfortunate souls. The cruel labor in the quarry had taken its toll. They stood before the queen, shrunken to skin and bone, clothed in tattered rags, their eyes reddened by dust. But in those eyes burned a brilliant fire.
Your Grace, them black-clads treated us like dogs, stripped us of dignity. So we beg you, give us arms, let us march neath your banner. 'Tis a chance at revenge we seek, we want!
Reynard leaned towards Meave and spoke in a scarcely audible whisper.
Majesty, they've knout. Not boots, not even foot wraps. To equip the lot, train them, would cost a small fortune.
'Tis true. They've nought to their names,
said the queen.
Have few skills to offer and little strength. But to look in their eyes is to know they'll never flee, never throw down their arms. Such recruits are worth coin in any amount.
Emaciated, downtrodden, the peasants met the queen's offer with gratitude. They relished the thought of facing their tormentors in a fight. Niamh spied the outline of Malabon Castle on the horizon and turned dour. True, no golden suns waved atop its towers, yet that did not mean those within supported her. Malabon belonged to House Obert, long in conflict with Miev's own, and with Mieve herself.
Behind their ramparts. Do you see them, Reynard?
Asked Mieve, shaking her head.
Countless ballistae, collecting dust, while war rages all around.
Perhaps the Oberts will lend us aid,
Reynard replied.
True, you've been at odds with them in the past, but perhaps now, faced with a common foe.
A common foe?
Snorted the Queen.
You mean Nilfgaard, to whom they opened their gates? Caldwell, whom they supported?
They supported me, Mother.
Villem said.
And I know they share my disappointment with General Epdahi's actions. When they see I now stand by your side, they might forget old wrongs.
The things I do for the good of my realm.
Mieve sighed.
So be it. Reynard, send a runner to the castle. Tell the Oberts their queen seeks a word.
Moments later, the castle's heavy iron gate creaked open. Mieve rode into the cobblestone courtyard, where Margravine Greta, head of the house, greeted her. Although, greeted is perhaps not the right word, for Lady Greta granted her only a barely perceptible nod.
What can I help you with, Mieve?
The war, my dear. The one being fought outside the walls of your castle.
Greta smiled to herself, then intertwined her brittle, ring-covered fingers.
I'm afraid that's impossible.
It is a vassal's sacred duty to serve her liege, and...
And my liege is King Villem.
Greta calmly retorted. Hearing his name, Villem stepped forward.
I wish to add my name to my mother's entreaty,
said the prince.
We tried to pact with the Empire. We trusted General Epdahi's promises, and he broke them, one after the other.
Margravine Greta dropped her gaze. The Oberts had lost lands, their serfs had been deported. Under Nilfgaard's rule, they had lost no less than the other great families.
We can brook no further delay. We must strike, united with all our might. Only thus can we retain hope for a victory.
Mine is long lost,
the noblewoman replied in a whisper.
I watched from my tower as their troops marched past. An endless sea of black plate. But you are right, Your Majesty. At some point, one must say enough. Even if that is one's last word.
Villem grasped the Margravine's brittle hand and bowed.
Thank you. On behalf of myself, my mother, and all our land.
Mieve left Malabon Castle reinforced by the Oberts and reassured by Villem's actions. If earlier she had harbored doubts about forgiving her son his betrayal, now she was convinced she had done the right thing.
We march with you, Lyrian beside Rivian, together at the Black Flats.
Freedom will cost us dearly. Dearly. Freedom will cost us dearly. Dearly indeed. Freedom will cost us dearly. Dearly indeed.
Your Majesty, the hut's untouched. Ripe grain in the fields, 'tis hard to believe. I feared we'd have another Edirn here, with the Blackclads setting fire to all.
I feared nothing of the sort. Nilfgaard's not stupid. Lands it aims to hold it doesn't destroy. And Villem did bend the knee to the Emperor.
Broadhead now loomed before Meve and her force. Once famous for its glowing forges and clanking manufactories, the city now stood silent. Why, you might ask? Because Mahakam. Decades past, it had opened its gates to human merchants and dwarven arms, exquisitely crafted and not nearly as dear as those made by man. The caravans had simply stopped coming to Broadhead. When its black-clad garrison spotted the Lyrians approaching, they'd hastily fled, left the city's gates open wide. Yet, they did not leave empty-handed. Their convoy comprising at least a dozen wagons loaded ostensibly to the hilt.
With what might they have fled?
With something damn heavy,
replied Gascon, squinting his eyes.
Look at this. 2 horses to pull each wagon, and the wheels cut deep into the road.
Just a few months past 'twas we who fled the black-clad hordes,
said Meve, her tone and mien betraying disgust.
Now our roles stand reversed. We are the aggressor. Well, let them run, I say. And let all Rivia see Nilfgaard tuck tail, rather than face us in a fight.
The Queen strode towards the open gates, slowly, deliberately, wondering still what spoils the invader had carried off. Crumbling walls, shattered windows, rotted wood. Broadhead was bleak, a dull shadow of its former self. As the Lyrians entered, the somber townsfolk glared at the arrivals and uttered not a word. That is, until they saw Villem and began to hiss and growl. Meve resolved to address the crowd.
Folk of Broadhead, you're free at last. The Nilfgaardian occupation is done.
Aye, and a new one starts now. Are you madman? Don't you recognize our banners? The Lyrian army stands before you. Oh, I recognise banners. Served neath them as a sergeant 15 long years. And then I came back to my own town. Know what I found? Hardship and squalor, your grace. All had gone to shite. On account of damn dwarves. Been flooding Rivia with their metal goods for years now. Us smiths don't so much as light their pipes in their foundries no more. You call yourselves the Lyrian army. Colours and banners confirm it. Well, what about your arms? Weren't forged in us fires, but in Mahakam's. By us worst foes. Hell, I even see some at knobheads in your ranks. And right behind, Prince Villem, who bent a knee to blackclads not long past. So what freedom's it you're giving us, your grace? Freedom to beg in common, not in Nilfgaard's mongrel tongue.
Beg? What do you want about, man?
There's no levy on goods from Mahakam. But without it, us workshops don't stand a chance. And ye, your grace, you wear their armour, bear their arms, and bring bearded bastards to our doorstep.
The dwarves are faithful allies. They help us because...
'Cause they've got something to gain. Simple as that.
Enough. Silence. Consider yourself lucky you've a merciful queen. I'd have had your head off by now. Move along.
Before Meave could leave the market square, Barnabas politely interjected.
Frankly speaking, there's a bit of truth.
I'm perfectly aware of that. But what do you want?
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but perhaps I might be of some help.
Do tell how. I'm all ears.
Everything your folk make here, the dwarves of Mahakam make twice as fast and twice as well. You must find a so-called niche, an innovation. And it just so happens innovations
are your speciality.
At the risk of being immodest, exactly. Besides, it might serve the cause of peace to show the folk here, non-humans, are not all bad, that they can help. Not just steal human jobs and piss in their milk.
I'll consider it, Barnabas. I shall think and let you know.
The time came to leave Broadhead, so Meave summoned her advisors, eager to hear their counsel. They put forth ideas, many of merit, but the Queen would decide the city's future. Meave knew she couldn't abandon the folk of Broadhead, leave them embittered, unsure of how to go on.
The time's come to bring hammer down on anvil again. Take this gold, and show the North the value of Broadhead steel.
Even with the Queen's support, the craftsmen could not compete. The dwarves of Mahakam, the goods from their foundries, stifled the city's workshops in but a few months. Meave had gambled much, but gained naught in return.
You must raise tariff on Mahakam and goods. Enough to stifle dwarves. Make trade not worth their while.
The wind howls like a ghastly apparition.
When Meave saw Reynard's usually stoic visage rent by a half-moon grin, she knew he brought particularly good news.
Your Grace, our toil has borne fruit. The liberated towns of Rivia have hired an outfit of mercenaries conveyed to your command, along with wishes for a speedy victory.
Meve cast an eye over the long column of hired soldiers, taking in their top-notch arms and battle-hardened faces. Her gaze lingered longer on their banners, surprised to see some bearing the Caldwell crest, suggesting Dragomir had proven worthy of the trust she had extended him.
With support like this to bolster our ranks, our way grows easier,
said the Queen with a smile.
Send the townsmen a letter. Say their queen thanks them for their devotion to the realm, and when the time comes, she shall reward them fittingly.
Rivia Castle. Seems our journey nears its end.
That end could yet prove tragic. We've daunting tasks ahead. Pride. It's all I ever felt pondering those walls. Yet now, to behold them from below, I truly do wish we hadn't built them so tall.
The castle of Rivia now loomed before the Lyrians. Water surrounded it on 3 sides, and dual defensive walls studded with podgy turrets completed its perimeter. It was famously difficult to take, and had changed hands only once, a few months before, when traitors opened its gates to the Nilfgaardians. Foreign banners waved upon the walls. The Golden Sun and General Epdahi's crest on Rivia's walls, the walls of home. There was somber silence among the troops, the glee and pride of many triumphs suddenly gone. For each knew if the Queen ordered an assault, most would lie dead by sunrise.
Your Majesty,
began Reynard in a reassuring tone.
We needn't strike quickly. We've time on our side. To prepare would be wise. 2 months, I wager, perfectly enough. We stop supplies from getting through. They'll capitulate, I've little doubt. Or at worst, be too weak to defend the fortress.
Reynard's reasoning was sound. There was no need for urgency. Meve had the upper hand for the first time in this war.
Let Epdahi wait,
said Meve, her eyes trained on the citadel.
Let him watch from those walls as we reclaim our realm, village by village, town by town. Follow me!
Meve turned her back to the castle, eager to take the fight elsewhere. Meve had returned to the foot of Rivia Castle.
These invaders have grown fond of Rivia Castle,
said Meve.
So let them stay and rot. Reynard, erect road barricades and guard posts between city and citadel. Gascon, seize all boats, barges, anything that floats. Stop anything from entering from the lake. Move!
Soon, Rivia Castle stood isolated from the world outside its walls. All roads leading to it were blocked, impassable. Fishing boats, a cordon, embraced the fortress on Loch Escalot. The lanterns on their bows glowed like fireflies in summer. Then, an emissary from the castle brought a message for the Queen. General Epdahi wished to meet, face to face, and half the way between the citadel and the Lyrian camp.
Well, well, some general,
smirked Gascon.
We've barely snapped the trap shut, yet he's already shaking in his knickers.
Be on your guard, Mother,
said Villem.
Epdahi I know better than anyone here. The man always has a trick up his sleeve.
We've a few of our own. Sleeves and tricks. But I thank you for the warning and concern.
Meve proceeded to the meeting point without delay. A lone rider soon appeared on the horizon. He came adorned in rich black robes, their golden trim shimmering in stray sunbeams. She'd seen him before, in Edirn, through the megascope.
You came as I requested. Good. Very good.
I couldn't possibly refuse such a courteous invitation, especially as compared to your previous missive. The art of diplomacy, you've improved your grasp.
Your realm fell quickly. I expended little strength in seizing it. This left me much time to study. But please, we must set aside this bitterness. I'd like to formally welcome you to Rivia, dear Queen.
I see you've readily adopted the role of gracious host in my home.
In point of fact, I've grown fond of the castle. Fortifications impressive, atypical of the north. Not so your brave soldiers, whom we shall pick off like ducks. I pity them, in fact.
Dry your eyes, General. Rest easy. I've no plans for a quick assault. I shall first wait to hear the rumbling in your bellies.
Remarkable. You truly believe you can win this war? I've not been in the north long, but have discovered something all the same. You don't grasp complex ideas. You know Nilfgaard is large, but your minds don't fathom its enormity. You see, for every army you defeat, another will come to take its place. One larger and better equipped than the one before. Even now, as we so pleasantly chat, Army Group East is en route to lift your siege, due to arrive tomorrow. And do you know what will happen when they do? They will crush you against your own castle's walls, like the maddening flea you are.
A charming analogy, but get to the point. Why'd you ask for this meeting?
For this very reason. I wish to see you with my own eyes.
They did not see enough in Edirn? Are you such an admirer of feminine beauty?
You flatter yourself. No, in you, I see an animal. Game. Prey. And as the hunt's due to start soon, I needed a more detailed image of the beast I'll be looking for.
You? On a hunt? Those delicate hands have never held spear or bow. Nout sharper than a letter opener, I wager. Tomorrow you will not be on a hunt. Tomorrow you will be at war. You best pray to all your gods you don't find me.
Without awaiting a response from General Ep-Dahi, Meve pivoted and turned toward camp. Her pace was quick, despite a heavy heart.
As a rule, human fortifications aren't worth a pound of shield marshite. But this fort sure turned out all right for you.
Seems your late husband, rest his soul, may have overcompensated a bit with this castle.
Meve's closest advisors already awaited her in the command tent. In a few brief words, the Queen gave a report of the meeting, only with great effort masking the quavering in her voice.
An army, an immense one, approaches from the west. If we meet in open battle, we stand not a chance.
Damn it! Why did no one warn me?
Our scouts were discovered, captured. It must be that.
Yes, it didn't seem right. Our way so clear, so untroubled.
We must flee? Not at all heroic, I admit, but sure as hell better than being trampled into the dirt.
Easily said, but for a problem. Our force is chiefly infantry. The army that draws near includes cavalry, several regiments. We cannot hope to escape them. We cannot hope to hide.
What do you advise?
We've two options. Capitulate.
Out of the question.
Or take the castle. Tonight.
Suppose for a moment it's possible. Tell me how and at what cost. Are we to scale a mountain of comrades' corpses to reach the top of the wall? I know we're at war and many die. But to command our troops to take that citadel is to condemn them to certain death.
Rivia's walls are unassailable, I fully agree. But there's more than one way to take any fort, and this fort too.
I think I like where this is going.
I know this citadel like no one else. I know its one potential weakness. The boat landing.
Wait. That narrowest of piers between the two turrets? The one where the fishermen would land?
The same. As I'm sure you recall, Your Grace, at that narrow pier's end stands a narrow door leading straight into the fortress. A small detachment could approach unnoticed, overwhelm any sentries, and get inside.
What then?
They would need to pass through the fort to the winch in the guardhouse, open the gate for the rest of the force.
That is suicide.
Perhaps, but as options go, we have it alone.
And I'm to choose to send folk there. Most certainly to die.
You needn't choose anyone, for I volunteer, and will take only those willing to do the very same.
Bloody wretched plan.
And you've a better one, do you?
Of course. I'll go instead.
Beg your pardon? I don't.
Face it, Reynard, you couldn't sneak past a corpse. Sound like a bloody tambourine in that armour. Apart from which, you're Maeve's right hand. So you ought to be by her side when the fighting starts.
Firstly, Reynard, I'm grateful. Well done, my friend.
Thank you, Your Grace.
But truth be told, I did indeed hear you walking to the tent from the other side of camp. And yes, you know Rivia Castle better than anyone else, but the assault must transpire silently. Gascon will lead the force.
Understood, Your Grace.
Cheers, Maeve. I'll try not to disappoint.
You won't, I'm sure. God speed you on your way, and please, try your damnedest not to die.
Gascon hand-picked his men, those most adept with daggers, not swords. Noiselessly, they glided through the dark toward the castle, the light of its lanterns blurred by the evening mist. Maeve watched anxiously as the boats glided away, her heart pounding in her ears. All depended on this mission. The fate of her realms, perhaps all the north, the lives of her troops, and her own. Now there was naught she could do but wait.
Good luck,
she whispered, gazing at the fortress walls, cloaked by the dark that seemed to surround all now.
Cork it.
Quick and painful this'll be.
Fuck, our arse is moving.
You see to the winch! We'll hold them off!
No. No, it can't be. Not yet. No.
The Lyrians prepared for battle, their silence absolute, in darkness, illuminated only by the pale light of the moon. Maeve was restless. She paced nervously in a circular pattern, awaiting the signal they'd agreed upon.
Blast, it's taking long. Much, much too long.
Finally, a torch's faint glow appeared atop the towering walls. It disappeared, then glowed again, and one more time around. Meve leapt in the air, and as she did so, barely stifled a cry of utter joy.
They made it. It worked. Villem, it's time. Sound the horns. Attack!
Moments later, Lyrians in the hundreds burst from the trees. The Nilfgaardian defenders loaded their catapults and ballistae. They did so slowly, convinced the castle walls remained impenetrable. Then they heard chains, grinding and clinking, and the sound sent shivers down their spines. Bewildered, they watched the main gate rise as the attacking force rushed forth. General Epdahi dispatched an elite unit to take back the winch at once. Yet he saw this was in vain and all was lost when Meve rode into the castle courtyard. Meve had begun the day known as a great warrior. Yet by night's end, legend was the cloak she wore. Her shield stopped powerful blow after blow as her blade found gaps in her foe's black armor. At first, Nilfgaardians scoured the fray in search of the Queen, hoping to prove great heroes. Soon, she was their chief scourge, and they began to flee before her blade that sung their death.
Retreat! Retreat!
What was this extraordinary vigor that surged through Meve? Naturally, she wished to liberate her castle and realm, drive off the invaders, defeat the arrogant General Epdahi. But in that moment, above all else, she longed to fight her way through to the guardhouse and bring Gascon's party relief.
Follow me! Move! Move!
As she stepped through the door into the tower, the silence told Meve she'd arrived too late. Gascon's men lay slaughtered in pools of their own blood, the man himself slumped over the winch's crank. 3 arrows in his chest rose and fell with his each ragged breath. Meve tore off her cloak and pressed it against him, desperate to stem the bleeding.
Help's on the way. Don't you even think of dying.
You know...
wheezed Gascon, a slight smirk on his lips.
I always enjoyed doing things just to spite you.
Medics on the stairs in the guardhouse, steps away, heard a long, blood-curdling wail. They entered the room to find the Queen kneeling, pounding the wall with her fists, her eyes flooded with tears. Gascon lay motionless beside her, covered by her cloak. The Queen rose, her fists clenched, her shoulders rigid, her knuckles white. Her face betrayed no sorrow, no despair, just rage, hot as a forge, immeasurable.
Now's not the time to mourn.
Seethed Meve, struggling to stay calm.
Now's the time for war, for slaughter, revenge. With victory today, we'll recover our home, return to our kin and set our blades aside at last. Yet until victory is ours, they must drink. Drink greedily of Nilfgaardian blood!
The Lyrians were at the brink, near their breaking point. They'd followed Meve for thousands of miles, over snow-clad peaks, through forbidding swamps. They'd fought, survived countless battles at her side. And though their gazes were now weary, she knew they'd follow her into fire.
Your Grace, the Blackclads, they've holed themselves up in the upper keep. We went to breach the wall, alas to no avail.
Meve nodded, twirled her sword, then leapt upon a mount. Her eyes spoke pure determination.
So we'll bloody well try again. This is the end, Epdahi. Do you hear me? I shall stick your head on a pike!
Thing about slings, they hide well.
Enough!
Thank you. Your fortress has superbly solid walls.
God!
This harvest will be reaping black-clad heads.
Ah!
In the treat!
The chase is on!
Enough! I do not need to hear this. Kill her!
War and capture!
Never had your kneecaps broken!
Ever have a storm knock out one of your teeth?
Fools! I'm surrounded by fools!
Gloire!
You mad? Don't say that!
Off to the front yet again.
This could hurt.
Quiet! Or the commissar will hear.
I warned you.
My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me.
Ach, Scheiß! In Trade!
What? Oh, yes, I'm on it. Ah!
Archers, let it be night. Obscure the sun with arrows.
That was not in the spellbooks. Now, how did that incantation go?
Nilfgaard had the upper hand, yet the black-clad spirits had suffered. They now made more use of shields than of swords. When Meve finally broke through their line, they raised their arms in surrender. Rivia Castle had fallen. It was hers once more.
Trocker! Nein zu Wien!
Meve showed her prisoners of war mercy, knowing full well they'd only followed orders. Death would be the fate of only Ardal ep Dahi, the one Nilfgaardian who'd issued those commands. Alas, the general had disappeared. A prisoner revealed ep Dahi had fled as soon as the Lyrians had surged towards the upper keep. He had glided down to the lower castle in a wicker basket for transporting food. Curled up beneath potato skins and other scraps, he'd scurried away not unlike a common maggot. Meve cursed her luck and leaned back against a merlin. Dawn was yet a few hours off, but the horizon had already begun to glow blood red. The Nilfgaardian reserves now drew near, too late to prevent the castle's fall.
I'll get him,
muttered the queen, more to herself than anyone else.
I swear on all that's sacred I'll catch the bastard. But now we've a pressing matter to see to. Preparing the defense.
That night, the war turned, with the battle for Rivia Castle as its fulcrum. Meve's great victory, not only retaking the stronghold in a single evening, but also fending off a further invading army, proved the Nilfgaardian Colossus had feet of clay. The armies of the north had united and now seemed to be on the attack everywhere. Imperial forces, while still far more numerous, lay stretched over thousands of miles. Their position was untenable, and Nilfgaard's commanders knew this. In a decisive battle, they yet stood a chance, so they gave said battle, and suffered a resounding defeat. Just a few months on from that memorable night in Rivia, the Imperial army was in utter disarray. Aldersburg, the fortress, remained a last point of resistance. General Ep-Dahi and what had survived of Army Group East had dug in there. This place, where Nilfgaard had triumphed grandly in the war's early days, would now bear witness to its impending defeat. It seems history, after all, has a sense of justice, or humor, or both. Though Meve had already reclaimed her realm, she refused to retire her sword just yet. For King Demavend had requested her aid in purging Edirn of the invader. How could she refuse? She owed the king a favor, firstly. Yet she also had a burning desire to settle the score with Ep-Dahi.
Demavend's envoy and I spoke, Your Majesty. The king has Aldersburg surrounded. He awaits and won't begin the assault till you arrive.
Good. I truly hate to miss it. Tell the troops to prepare. Gear and ire.
Of course, Your Grace.
Yes? Is there something else?
Pardon my boldness, Your Grace, but I can't help but be concerned. You don't sleep. You've the air of illness about you.
I think back to that night in Rivia often, to Gascon's death. Perhaps I made a mistake. Perhaps he didn't have to die.
He didn't, Your Majesty. He needn't have been there at all. I'm a soldier. I swore to serve you. Gascon, not so. He might have left at any time. Guilt, pity trouble you, Your Grace, I know. But he signed on willingly and knew exactly what for. Gascon gave his life for he thought you worthy of it. There's no greater proof of friendship, no greater gift one can give. Accept it, Your Grace, and remember him with gratitude, not sorrow.
You're right. I thank you, Reynard. That I needed to hear. We've talked enough. We must march on to Aldersburg.
Your Grace, if I may. Some of our comrades in arms would like a word with you. The war nears its end. Paths are likely to diverge.
I see.
Yes, Your Grace?
The war nears its end. What next for Reynard Odo?
Whatever you command, Your Grace. Is something amiss, my lady?
To be perfectly blunt, I've no wish to give you orders anymore.
Your Grace? Would you wish me to leave? Remove me from the court?
No, Reynard. I'd wish you to stay. But I'd no longer wish to be your queen alone. Do you catch my meaning?
I do, Meve. I do.
It's time I attended to...
Always good to see you, Green. How can I help you?
Our conversation in Mahakam. Do you recall it? When you resolved to join my force, leave your homeland?
Of course. Clear as day, that. You saved me and my clan. I'm in your debt. Will be for some time.
Well, we've won the war. And you had a hand in the victory. Heavily so. As I see it, you've more than repaid your debt.
Feeling a wee bit choked up, as King Desmond said when an assassin's bolt ran clear through his esophagus. Come here and give us a squeeze.
Later, perhaps. But Gabor, any plans for what comes next?
Ha! I wasn't expecting to have this chat, so I'm a bit caught with my knickers down past my knees.
War's over, but we've much left to do. Our relations with non-humans, for instance. I mean to improve them. And I think you could help, Gabor, greatly so.
Meaning, you'd like me to stay in your court? I'd see it as an honour, your majesty. An honour true.
We shall return to...
No skin of...
You need my help with anything?
We've come a long way, Barnabas. You've plans for the future?
We may have won the war, but I've orders still on my plate. So many riddles unanswered, so many inventions unrevealed.
Perhaps you could join my court. Continue your work there.
We get along splendidly, Your Grace, I know, but that's simply not the life for me. In situ, one sees nothing new, as they say. Besides, I have some unsavory memories from my time at the court of King Niedemir. Come to think of it, I do wonder if they ever managed to put out that fire.
I understand, Barnabas. Yet if ever you change your mind, you know where to find me.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for everything.
Tie my attention. How do you fare, my son? My advisors, have you met them?
I certainly tried, but they've no wish to speak with me. Begin to mumble when I draw near. Even the ridiculously reverent Count Reynard.
Well, suspicion must still grip their minds. And for good reason, you must admit.
Yes. I've got a lot of work ahead of me, that's plain to see.
And you shall get to it straight away. As soon as we've spoken. We shall speak later.
The Lyrian army had grown into a great serpent. So much so that riding at the column's tail, Niamh could not see its head. Footmen, cavalry, and archers stretched like a glistening snake between two horizons. Niamh had come a long way indeed, and she felt proud. As did Villem. Suddenly, Niamh heard angry cries and the clash of steel against steel, all at the column's front. Suddenly.
Surround them!
Normally disciplined, determined to an extreme, these Nilfgaardians quickly broke rank and ran.
Deserters! Leaderless!
I know you take us for savages.
Began Niamh, her gaze passing over several scraggy black-clads.
But fear not. We shan't flay you alive nor eat you for dinner.
I was in Aldersburg when it fell. Broke my heart, that did.
The good mothers guided you to victory.
Niamh was listening to a scout's report.
Blast it all.
Seed the Queen, looking at the bloodied corpses. It had been justice by... Niamh noticed one of her Corporal Larkin's...
It's a trap! 2 arms!
The Scoia'tael fighters stood no chance against Meve. When the sounds of battle
Youthful you look, elf. How many summers to you? 30? More?
"27, my lady."
"27. A wonderful age. A shame to die so young.
I beg you, Renna. For mercy, I ask. If not for me, then at the least for...
Mercy? You jest. You wait in ambush, come at us like bandits, and now you dare ask for mercy.
It was no ambush.
Don't play me for a fool. I know what I saw, and am no stranger to warcraft.
It's not you we wished to fight. Sverre.
Then who killed Corporal Larkin, Werebubs?
When we saw you on the high road, we fell back and hid in the wood. We wanted you to pass. Your scout's hearing very keen. He heard something, then spotted our tracks. You must understand. We had no choice.
I can understand, but I cannot forgive. Who followed me across half the continent, only to die in a ditch for naught, with victory so close at hand.
My lady, I too lost brothers and sisters today. Their deaths equally senseless.
Why are you here? Were you to rescue Ebdahi?
Rescue someone? No, Renna. We flee. The Nilfgaardians have realized they'll lose the war and have renounced us. Without their support, we stand no chance. Demavend has loosed his hounds. They hunt our units one by one. He's offered 50 gold pieces for the head of each Scoia'tael. It's the same in Temeria and Kedwen, if not worse. We wished to join with your Veth's unit, flee together as far as we could. It was our last hope.
Why do you tell me all this?
Because you listen still. You've not ordered me killed, so... I beg you. So few of us remain. All tired, all wounded. We pose no threat. Let us leave your realm.
Enough senseless killing for one day. So be it. You're free to leave.
I don't know how to thank you.
Make certain I don't ever regret this decision. 'Twould be thanks.
I thank you for your compassion.
Meve personally unfastened the prisoner's chains as her Lyrians looked on in silence. Lyrian corps neared Aldersburg, and it could not have been on a more idyllic day. The sun shone, birds sang. Saw it as she had at the war's start. Walls illumined by a fire's glow, the cries of fleeing civilians, the stench of burning flesh. As on that day, Aldersburg was under siege. At this time, Eden's flags fluttered in the field, while Nilfgaard's tattered sons crowned the fort's towers. The Queen found Demavend's tent without difficulty. Made of sheets of silk edged with silver thread, it positively shone.
Seems the realm's restored to a virtuous path,
muttered Meve.
Aha! There she is! Queen Meve, Savior of the North. The Sun Slayer!
Mockery I don't appreciate.
I wouldn't dare. Not my words, those. You've been painted thus in song. Master Dandelion himself wrote a ballad, The Battle for the Bridge. If you take the bard at his word, you're as fierce with a blade as any witcher.
Is that jealousy I hear?
To be perfectly honest, Meve, it is. For I hadn't the pluck, nor resolve.
And when all the North tucked tail went to shite, you alone stepped up and bared your fangs. Let it be a lesson for the future to us all.
You called out the future. Tell me, how's your son?
Baldwin. Oh, growing like a weed he is. And the spitting image of his old man.
Good news all, especially given the mother's profession.
She's now Countess Demeretta of Gullet, a lady of the court.
Ooh, your lawful wife must be thrilled.
Hard to say in truth. I've not seen her in some time. Duty keeps me away, you understand.
You work hard, I'm certain. Many a night, too.
You might say so indeed. But enough about me. As we're chirping away like two gossips in the field, do tell me, what of Villem?
He's here with me.
Ah. In chains, perhaps?
No. In coronet and robes. We came to an understanding. What's past is past. You called out the
Bald.
Good news. Ooh, you look.
Hard to.
He's here.
Ah.
No. A lesson for the future? What do you mean?
My dear, this war won't change a bloody thing, you know. Nilfgaard will be Nilfgaard, the North. We'll sign a truce, the Blackclads will turn tail towards home. But the old borders don't satisfy us so.
I'm perfectly satisfied with them, thank you. And I just wish other folk would respect them too.
You're one hell of a warrior, but you're no strategist at all. Your perspective, you've got to broaden it. Nilfgaard, we cannot allow it to regain strength and spirit, else we'll face another invasion within a decade or two. Measures are required. Preventive, preemptive, whatever the learned call it. Build an army, a vast one. Wait in ambush. And when they least expect it, break their bloody spine. Just think, if we were to join forces...
Enough. I don't wish to hear it. Won't even entertain the thought. I'll help you take Aldersburg, but then I'll go home, where, God's willing, I'll live to a ripe old age.
As you wish. We can mount the assault at any time, but...
But?
My scouts report a small Nilfgaardian force approaching from the south. They've stayed off the roads, moved only under the cover of night, escorting someone.
Who?
I've no notion. Could be a mage. Devilishly unpredictable, that lot. Could wreak havoc in our ranks. Either way, before we rush at the walls, we must make certain they don't reach Aldersburg at all.
I shall see to it.
Are you sure? You've just arrived. Must be weary after the long journey.
An understatement if I ever heard one. But I wish all this to be over, quickly.
Niamh set out after the Nilfgaardians immediately, a cavalry escort in tow. Her unmatched scouts, who had led the army through the mountains of Mahakam and Angren swamps, quickly found the enemy's trail.
This way, Your Grace. It's not far now.
That very same day, Niamh's force caught up to the mysterious black-clad unit. Lyrian riders surrounded the foe, forcing the Nilfgaardians to halt. All fell so quiet, the creaking of taut Lyrian bowstrings could be discerned.
The common tongue. Which of you knows it?
I do, Your Majesty.
You also know who you deal with, I see. What is your name?
Kaldvin, Your Majesty.
At last, a Nilfgaardian name I can pronounce. So, Kaldwin, it seems this war will reach its end in 2 days' time at the most. 'Twould be silly to die today, wouldn't you agree?
It would, milady.
Precisely. I've spilled enough blood. I've lost the appetite for more. So, provided you don't give me a good reason to kill you, you'll walk away with your lives. Now tell me. You carry something for General Ebdahi. What is it?
A letter.
Urgent to the point of insanity, it must be. Who wrote it? The dear Madam Ebdahi?
No, Your Majesty. The Emperor.
My. A letter from Emir himself. You must be an important person. A noble, or... Yet your uniform is simple, with no discernible distinctions. Who are you truly, Kaldwin? A spy?
A simple messenger, Your Majesty.
Don't lie. I know messengers, how they travel. Alone, armorless atop a swift steed. You're escorted by cavalry of the heavy sort.
For I often carry orders the recipients don't wish to perform, thus the escort.
Give me the letter.
I've sworn to deliver it to General Ebdahi, or to die in the quest to do so.
Oh, very well. My translator shall read this letter, then return it to you. You shall break no vow, and who knows? You might even survive.
And if I refuse?
Guess.
So be it. I accept your offer.
Meave's translator cracked the seal and read. And as he read, his eyes grew wide as saucers. Then he whispered in the Queen's ear.
Truly. And you're certain you're not mistaken? The wonders of this world.
Coldwyn, consider this your lucky day. I allow you to complete your mission, with one proviso.
And that is?
That when you hand him the letter, you will give the General my regards.
As Coldwyn and escort set off towards Aldersburg, the Lyrian soldiers looked at their queen with disbelief. To leave a Nilfgaardian to fulfill a secretive task. Niamh failed to stifle a rather mean laugh. They'll understand tomorrow, she thought. General Ebdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum. One signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Ebdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Niamh had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ah! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap, she find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew. Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Ah, very well. Whom shall we start with? Villem? He worked hard to regain his mother's trust and respect. Took on many daring missions, regardless of the risks. The lad who Nilfgaard had wielded as a tool now sowed terror along its borders, and appeared a successor most worthy of Niamh. Gascon was buried with honors of the most refined yet mournful sort. His peer lords themselves bore the casket. Soldiers in parade dress beat the funeral drums, and a new stone figure appeared beside the Brossard family vault, the very pointer from their crest, a ducal crown upon its head. As news of the Nordling victory filtered south, Nilfgaard's inhabitants greeted it with disbelief. Returning Imperial soldiers told stories of Lyria's cruel queen, who murdered prisoners and sullied sacred laws. They referred to her as Gvaeldet, the bloodthirsty one. With the advent of peace, tensions waned. Lyria's and Rivia's disparate races seemed to live harmoniously, side by side. The Queen pressed for new laws aimed at curbing oppression. They were a step towards more enlightened rule, yet sadly were habitually broken. And Niamh? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Reynard ever at her side, tempering, supportive. No longer a general and trusted advisor, he had to the Queen become something more. Much, much more. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.